Brace the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started today at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
You're listening to the Who is Christine Anyway podcast, episode 2, part 1. I'm hanging out here with Rob Kristofferson. A lot of you right now on the internet are going, who is Rob Kristofferson, genuinely?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but it's crazy because, you know, somebody had came to me and was discussing with me, like, your name just popped up out of the blue. And they were talking about how they were on TikTok. And they were like, I found this video. And you hold what is considered the holy grail for a group of fans who are very devoted and dedicated to their Lord and Savior, which she is wonderful. I will give her that. She is absolutely, you know, a great person. And I think everything she's got now, she's well earned. And Rob, what is it that you have?
So way back in, I think this was 2006. A friend of mine told me, it's like, hey, you've got to check out this artist. They're recording in this local studio, and they had a MySpace page. Like, this is
aging
how
us, Rob.
Yeah, I know.
Us.
Like, we're going back to MySpace, and went out, checked out her page, and I was like, oh wow, I really like this stuff. And it was like a very acoustic music. Her voice was very intriguing, and the songs, like, they sounded great. The lyrics are great and everything. So I bought the CD. It was by an artist called May Jailer, and the album was called Sirens. And I got this, like, I didn't really know what to expect, but I get this. It's just it's not professionally done. There's like a label on it, like you could feel it. It's paper. It
That was
actually
professional
has,
back then, Rob.
yeah, it did have the black
Yes, that looks so cool.
yeah, Blackburn, but yeah, May Jailer, Sirens, and it came with this note. And I can read the note for you here. It says, "Dear Rob, I just wanted to say thank you for your thoughts on my music and for buying the CD. I hope you like it. Sending you thanks and peace, May Jailer." And years later, like 6 years later, actually probably like more like 5, there's a song that dropped called Video Games. And I was like, I was watching the music video. I was like, wait, isn't that the girl I bought the CD from back in 2006? And it turns out it was, and that girl went on to become Lana Del Rey. So I apparently own one of the first CDs that she ever made.
I'm not 100% sure on this. I think it's the only one in circulation based on the research I've done. And just to be clear, I'm from Saranac Lake. You're from Saranac Lake. The next town over having been Lake Placid, which, you know, is all part of the Tri-Lakes. You know, when you go to like Saranac Lake, Lake Placid, and Tupper Lake, they're known as the Tri-Lakes. And well, her name's Lizzie Grant. Her dad's Rob Grant. Rob Grant and Associates, you know, real estate. You know, we all grew up kind of walking by that building, and it was just, you know, kind of one of those things. She recorded that at Cushman Studios, Jim Cushman's place in Lake Placid. He's a great guy too, really talented. The whole situation just kind of goes well. And you used to go, you know, I was booking shows in the Getaway, you know, probably, you know, around this, and you would go into the shows and you'd buy merch all the time. So it's kind of one of those things where, I mean, you kind of got the Willy Wonka ticket there, and you really did, and you held on to it, and it's in pristine condition. And, you know, I think, I hope Lana at some point sees this, and I hope she knows that you've taken such good care of her art, because I think that's so important. And I think it's even better that, you know, it's a local guy who she wrote a note to. And I mean, I imagine she was writing that note with genuine gratitude that you had purchased her album. You know, she poured her heart into that. There's how many songs are on that album? Like 11?
Uh, 11 or 12, I think.
11 or 12. It takes a lot going into an album, and especially like beginning pieces.
Mhm.
So when you have these experiences, and I've had, a bunch of my friends who used to play the Getaway have broke off into other pieces or have gone on to be session players. I'm just the odd duck out who went into the business side of things, into the entrepreneur side, and into the actual venue management, marketing, branding, and all that. Except one other kid, and he actually is somewhat affiliated with the situation to a degree.
Mhm.
Um, and his name is Alex Frizzell, and he's actually down uh, in North Carolina, I believe, working for a college. Very nice guy, very smart. He and I both went to Berkeley, out in
Mhm.
Boston, Berkeley School of Music. And it's just kind of weird, that bridging gap that we never really saw it kind of growing up. We're just like, hey, I'm going to buy this album. Do you remember how much you paid for it? Like,
If
I think
if
the
I had
going
to
rate back
guess,
then
like
was like $5 or something like that.
I think with like shipping and everything, it's probably like $10 would be my
Yeah.
guess.
So, like, I'm going to emphasize this on a monumental level, how important it is to support local musicians. Like,
Hmm.
truly, like, even if you're going to the show and you're like the only person in that room, I can't count how many times that I learned from those shows what I needed to do. Yes, you celebrate and you have great success at times, but it's always good to kind of hang out where there is, um, the learning curve, and
Hmm.
to constantly buy those albums. Or people, I remember when shirts were $5. You could go into the Getaway and they'd be like,
Yep.
"Hey, you want a shirt?" And it was like a single screen, and they were
Hmm.
$5, $10 maybe. And I'm going to go ahead and emphasize that the Getaway was in no shape or form code, but
No,
no,
no
like,
way.
windows had like chicken wire in them. And if that building
Mhm.
had caught on fire, we would have all just kind of
Oh
turned
yeah.
into there was one door. Actually, there was two, because there was one going down to the bathrooms that you could go down, or
Yep.
there was the one that I would make the bands load in and out of. And that was like, how many? Oh my God. That was like, if I have a picture of it, and it's like looking up Mount Everest. And I remember,
Yeah.
oh, I felt so bad for the musicians, because they would get to the bottom with their cabs and they'd just do that look back and they go, really?
Yep.
I'd be like, you gotta get, and then when you get to the top, sharp corner.
Yeah.
Good luck.
You're gonna have to earn it. You want to play here,
Also,
you have to earn it.
also, it's $5 to get in, so you're really not gonna. I mean, you're gonna get what you get.
Right.
So, a lot of really great artists came out of the area, and especially when we talk about Lana, Lizzie, um, her story is so unique and it is so crazy. And
Hmm.
it's this really weird situation where when I go, I really don't meet very many people who are from my neck of the woods in the industry. And you and I have remained friends for a long time. Your dad, put my family in timeout a lot. And
Right.
like, to put it nicely,
Right.
which is fine. Didn't put me there. Like, I loved your dad. I thought he was super nice and I thought he was very
Yeah.
fair. So your dad was a really great guy. And I mean, he's actually pretty prestigious in the town for what he did. He was a very, very good guy. So
Mm.
I don't meet very many people. And when they do go, they're like, well, where's that? And how do you do that? I'm like, okay, so you go to Canada, but not.
Right. Yeah.
Or I'm like, where the Olympics were? They're like, yeah. I'm like, not there, to the right. Okay.
Right.
Like,
You want to know what you do, you know where the Olympics are normally held, like in these big cities? Imagine a place that's like a tenth the size of that. And
it's the D
that's
side, like not even the
yeah.
B side. Like, but it's
Yeah.
it's actually on the roster for a potential, usage for, the sliding facilities, I guess, coming up, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I would be neat to see something come back to that town. However, I'm still kind of, Main Street is so narrow in
Yeah.
that town. I'm like, okay. And if, you got to play, there's crosswalks, but, the tourists like to play Frogger. It's a very tourist
Hmm.
oriented town.
Yep.
So, there was three very poignant demographics. There was the Lake Placid kids, there was the Saranac Lake kids, and then there was Tupper Lake. That was its own
It
demographic.
was its own thing. They did their own thing because like
They were
but
lumberjacks.
yeah, well, I mean, like, between Lake Placid, Saranac Lake, it's a separation of like what, 8 miles versus Tupper
Yeah.
Lake, where it's like 20. So like, we kind of did our own thing closer
Say
to
the
Lake
thing,
Placid.
Rob. Say the thing.
I mean, yeah, look, we considered them rejects, and I live
There
in
we
Tupper
go.
Lake. I can say
They
that
were like
now.
our football like enemy too, which is
Yeah,
crazy. Like I'm
And
like,
we beat
yeah,
them
we're
every year.
we
Every
were like in
single
the
year we beat them.
1980s. Like we still have a football team grudge, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't. Okay, like here we are. Okay,
Yeah. We didn't have that with Lake Placid. We had the hockey grudge with Lake Placid because they
yes,
didn't have a football team. So yeah.
yeah. It's just, but we had an ice castle. Like we were just kind of like that.
Hmm.
We were the middle child. Like that's the
We
best way
were.
to put it. We were the middle child, and there was like Tucker, like the youngest, and then there was like Pasta, the oldest, who had so much potential.
Yeah.
And Saranac Lake's constantly having its winter carnival every year. It's been doing that for like over 100 years. So
Right.
when I run into people trying to find poignant things to point out about the town, I'm like, okay, we have a castle made of ice. Like,
Yeah.
why? I'm like,
Right.
well, it gets really cold. And they're like 20. And I'm like, no, top of Whiteface is like 140 yesterday,
Right.
below
Yeah,
zero.
exactly. Exactly.
So
Like there aren't a lot of highlights. The highlights are Robert Louis Stevenson got tuberculosis and decided to come up there. Tuberculosis
trees,
was huge. Just like, yeah, so you go
foliage.
basically freeze for about like, half the year, hoping that improves your lungs.
They say if you
Albert
can live there, you can
Einstein,
live anywhere.
yeah, pretty much.
But
Because
it's,
it just gets so cold.
but we are lucky. And then that's the thing is
Hmm.
like that town. And when I was bringing in concerts this past summer, it was, the best line I could think to come up with is what's the point of having a necklace if you're never going to take it out? Like you guys are always
Right.
focusing on beautifying the place. It
Right.
is, it's a great vacation place. It has so much potential and it doesn't, it's like stuck. So
Yeah.
when we go to Lake Placid, we have a lot of live music in the area, but it's a lot of like drum circles. And
Hmm.
I a lot of talent. But I really do miss like the little punk rock scene, the kids who are, doing what, well, Lana now, but May Jailer was then. Like, I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna put it out. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna do it. And you realize that, I don't know if that's her actual first ever recording. She would know that, like if she did it at home and burned it on like a CDR. But it's kind of one of those things where it's like when you're an artist and you take that step, like even you have a podcast. So even having your first podcast published, it's a leap. Like
Hmm.
you're gonna have to, like, that's starting A, and it's inevitable. Like it was built into me. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be awful, and we're just gonna ride.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna converse our way through this. And it was interesting, but her stuff seemed to just be amazing right up the gate. Like
Um, yeah, like I think she spent a lot of time curating her image, how she
yeah.
wanted to come across to her audience and everything like that. And then she took some time to do that. I know she played in New York City for a while, because I
Yeah,
know
she was
she
going to like
moved.
a boarding school in
Yeah,
Connecticut, I believe, at a point. Her family had shipped
yeah,
her away. That's the humanistic side of her that I think doesn't, I mean, it gets discussed, but it doesn't get discussed.
right.
And that's, it's the discussion about the area too. She has been forefront about having had alcoholism when she was younger, having to leave the
Hmm.
area to get away from it. And, that was a fate that befell a lot of people that you and I grew up with. Like it was, we just talked about it. Like you're in the hole. Like there's not much going on around you. It's very encompassing. It's very trapping. It's
Yeah.
very like you have to live up to this thing. And we again go into the small town politics. And there's, this is back a ways. They didn't have, I mean, mental health care has come so far these days, and
Hmm.
addiction resources have come so far. But when you go back then, it was something that nobody really discussed. We all just went and partied in the woods about it. They're
Right.
like,
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. It was like, I think like the best artist to ever capture what it feels like to live up here, and like I know he's not really talking about this area, is Noah Khan, because he's like New England is very similar to the way the Adirondacks are. Like we may
Yeah,
not be a New England state, but like
we're a
we
belly
have a very
button.
similar vibe. But it's just like it's small towns. There's a fear that you're never going to make it out of this small town, and for most
Yeah.
people, they don't. And
It's
and then
vacuous.
yeah, it is, and
It
it
really is.
becomes drinking, it becomes drugs, and like if you look at a lot of the towns up here, that's really what it
Yeah.
is. Some have a better image than others. I live in a town that doesn't have a great image. It has the worst image of the Tri-Lakes towns, but
Yeah.
that's fine. I enjoy the seclusion, but it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is a very like go nowhere kind of town.
I,
And
it's one,
it's not charming in any way.
Well, where you are.
Yeah.
It's charming in a, oh wow, look at that thing kind of way.
Right.
But it's vacuous and it is confining. And
Hmm.
that was actually a lot of the fate that befell my family was addiction. That's how they met your dad. And
Hmm.
so,
It's how a lot
I
of
got
people met my dad.
like the
It's
first time I'm like,
unfortunate,
Grandma,
but
I'm in the newspaper because I grew up with my grandparents. I'm like, Grandma,
Mhm.
I'm in the newspaper. She's like, which page? And she's flipping back to like I'm like, not the blotter. Go back. I love her. She's amazing. I should just, one day I'm going to just talk about her for an entire hour. She's amazing.
Mhm.
But it's kind of one of those things where they talk about wanting a lot of the people to move back, but the people that have moved away are like, really? Like,
Yeah.
why? Because, the resources town has, it's like, yeah, well, we believe in this. And I'm like, if you believe in it, then do this. And that
Hmm.
was the struggle with, the concerts like I did last year, and I went through and I'm like, listen, this town needs live music, mid to large scale. It's a great
Hmm.
source of revenue. I went and discussed the economic impacts, direct ancillary impact. I went in with resources. I went in with references. I came packing my normal PR marketing self, and they were like, yeah, well, you're still not like one of us. And I'm like, what do you mean one of you kind of thing? And, even asking like, that's where Who is Christine Anyway came from, because it was, somebody said, was like, who's Christine Anyway? And I'm like, well, my grandma worked with you for like 44 years at the same
Right.
hospital, frequent probably now. And, my family's usually in the same place, and, going down through it. And it was interesting, the dynamic, because it was very much like, what is it, the aliens on Toy Story that are like, one of us,
Yeah. Yeah.
and if I could find a way, they're like, but at the same time, it's better the devil you know.
Yeah.
Like, would you rather have me come in? I know the area. I literally did such research on the animals' breeding patterns that my concerts had been. Stop laughing, Rob. That's
What the look, I just that's
hey,
in-depth
I don't
research that
want
I
to ruin
don't expect from
anybody's family.
anybody. Like, what are we talking about? Animal breeding patterns. What is this madness?
I don't know. It's the same thing that someone was like, well, I won't be able to hear my crickets. And I'm like, what? And that's, the cricket on the T. So, but 100 decibels, square foot. And I was like, I can't believe I went to Berkeley to Google crickets. But it's at the same time, I'm like, this is terribly fascinating. And now it's weird because I hear the crickets all the time now, because it's like you never see a red car until you think about until you have a red car. So I don't know, but I had done the breeding patterns of the animals because the multi-purpose field that was first intentioned, they were like, well, we're going to, annex it in. We'll do this. And this way, the town can have the income to, take care of itself, the
Hmm.
infrastructure. And I was like, excellent, let's do this. I had my venue introduction tech packet. It was like 19 pages long. And then I had also done all of the EPA. I have EPA certifications. I have through so many foundations, followed through the environment, which is crazy. Cause like, if I go to Boston, they're like, can you just bring a case of water? Like, yeah, okay, let's go, and compared to when you and I were growing up, I was 14. I'm in the getaway. I really legally shouldn't be running a business at 14. And I'm
Right.
really kind of, not really technically, I had 250 people in the upstairs of the getaway. Again,
Hmm.
not code at all. And in hindsight, that's terrible. And the fact that there's bars over the windows.
Yeah,
That's
that
small
definitely wasn't a
clerical
good move.
oversight. small clerical oversight there. I don't think
Just a little bit.
a little bit, and I don't even think it was ADA compliant. Like it was.
No,
Now that I know
no.
what I'm supposed to be doing, I'm like, oh, well, fuck it.
Yeah.
So, and you had went, those were awesome though. We were like, there was couches along the wall, there was kids
Hmm.
standing on them. Again, not recommended. And
Right.
there's all this we're moshing. We don't care. I
Yeah.
remember, so it was Abbott Hayes playing and Monday Morning. I'm sure
Hmm.
you have their stuff still too. And
Yeah.
I actually think I have one of their shirts tucked away. It was like green with white writing Monday mornings. And I had went downstairs, and there was like that little sitting booth underneath the light.
Yeah.
And I sat down for a second, and the drummer started playing, and the sheetrock, the plaster and slab started falling from the ceiling in dust and tiny chunks. And I'm like, it's like going
Yeah.
into my drink, like it's something out of a sitcom. And I'm like, all right. I
Yeah.
just like, I guess I'll just, I'll go to Owl's
That
Nest after.
that's also like the epitome though of like
I
youth in a lot of
loved it.
ways. It's like being in unsafe spaces and making them your own, and like that's like
Yeah.
one of the best things about it. It's like that really is built into youth. How can we take this unsafe space and make it our own?
But that's the crazy part too, is that
Hmm.
nobody's giving kids, especially kids, youth, the ability to problem solve.
Right.
Like when Jamie handed me over the venue and she's like, yeah, I support you. She never once condemned me. I went on Google, we're MySpace days. I know. I was using a byofl.org. I was finding an image on Google, like it'd be like a ghost. And I'd print it. And okay, a little bit of copyright infringement. And then I would write all the band's names in different fonts on Microsoft and tape them to the paper and then put them in the
Hmm.
halls in the school or in the hall, like down the street.
You know,
And, even back then, the Waterhole would do some non-alcohol serving shows in the
right.
upstairs. And that was awesome. I loved that venue.
Yeah.
But you'd go out into those situations, but it, for some reason, felt safer. It felt like the parents were kind of like, we're over here. We know what you're doing,
Right.
but we're
Yeah.
not going to intervene, problem solve a little bit here.
Right. Yeah. No, like for the most part, kind of just left your own devices to do your own thing, which is great. Like, let kids explore and stuff. And generally, I think we were safer more often than not. Yeah, some locations, sure, not the safest, but I think we
But
were
you
all,
figured them out quickly and you were
yeah,
like, maybe not, and just kind of went
yeah,
around it, you
yeah,
know? And it was the
hmm
same thing. Like families felt safe with each other's families.
yeah,
That's the
yeah,
thing. Like I could be like, I'm going over to the Kristoffersons, or I'm going over to this person, to that person's. And they were safe. Like you knew you were in a good position. So
yep,
it's kind of like, I don't know, the area kind of has shifted to a degree. Kids are not the same anymore either. Time has really evolved.
hmm
And especially like musician wise in that area, I find that like, so there's our generation and then there's the generation above us,
hmm
like the ones that are like in their 40s and 50s.
right,
um they're the ones that are really kind of navigating the genre tone of that entire area to a degree. They're going, well, we don't want anything loud, we don't want anything heavy, we don't want anything this,
right,
we don't want a distortion pedal, we don't want that, we don't, hey, we need this. Somebody at one point, I think I had saw a contract where they wanted me to bring in a concert and the decibel level was like 85, and I'm like, that's a blender.
right,
Like, how do you have a concert no louder than a blender?
right.
Like, do you get out much? Like, do you
Like
just go outside?
I've been to concerts like that. There were bands that I saw at the Lake Placid Center for the Arts that were probably
Mm.
in that level. So like, and
A
probably
good
some that were a
acoustic
little bit
show.
louder. Yeah,
Yeah, a good
yeah.
acoustic show will keep the, that sound down.
Hmm.
And honestly, it's kind of, I love acoustic shows and I love when they do throw things in there like that, but it's like so few and far these days. But I'm really excited that like Placid's got Jim Brewer coming in
Hmm.
December. I think I love his comedy as a whole. I think Lake Placid too is one of those places that people talk about. Like the
Yes.
alligators. I'm like, I wouldn't live there. Like November,
Right.
alligators done. Like, we're
No,
done.
yeah. No, there's no way. I don't think there's enough food for an alligator to subsist up here either.
Just
But like,
during Iron Man. Just
yeah, yeah,
put it
that's
in
about
your
it.
like, it's like a buffet, like a Ponderosa, since we're back in the 90s up there. So it's
Oh
kind of,
God, yeah.
you know,
Well,
I,
if it's Lake Placid, it's a Howard Johnson's. So
oh, they got rid of that though. I
I
loved
know.
Hojo's. They had like
I
honey
did.
chicken or something like that, which is ridiculous
Hmm.
because I sound like an old lady who goes to the cafe and is like, I always order the same thing, but I really did order the same thing every
It was
time.
reliable. It was
That's it. I
reliable.
never
You
got
knew what
sick
you were
off
getting.
that. I'm not doing
Yeah.
that food bar, but I never got sick off the
I
chicken. Like,
mean, if you wanted to breathe, I remember going into that Howard Johnson's with my friend circle,
mhm.
and we would just like eat as much as we could out of that
Hell
that
yeah.
buffet, and like
That's what those
we
buffets are made
survived.
for, sir. Like, and you
Yeah,
better bring a big bag and just start shoveling potato salad
basically.
in.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
3 rolls, 4 or 5 rolls, save it for
Yeah,
later. It's cool.
yeah.
And it
Back
was,
when I could handle food, more regularly than I can now. Oh
oh, we
God.
turned 30. Our Czech knees light came on. Like, I mean, I'm in
Basically.
my mid 30s now. You're a little over me, so
Yeah.
it's kind of one of those things where it's like, oh, what flavor Tums is in my snack bowl?
Oh
So
yeah, exactly.
Also, the mint is disgusting and I hate the texture of Tums.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's trash.
yeah, I got so it's like sickness season, like with all the kids going back to school. Petri dish week is what I call it. And
Hmm.
I got this, it's like Zicam, and they're like prevent colds. And I'm like, this is a good idea. And it's like, they're all like the emergency mix packets. And I'm like, oh God, no.
Hmm.
So I got the spray. It's like mint. I'm like, oh, I love like the Listerine sprays. This will be great. No, no, I was so wrong. Like you
No,
spray
this
it's
was a
like spray it
mistake.
in your cheek and it goes into your cheek and it like stays there and it's like this texture and I'm like I can't get
No.
it out of my mouth. Like it doesn't matter how much Listerine's just it's so bad at this point. And I'm like, how do you mix mint and mint and get not mint? Like I don't
Right.
understand.
I don't need your product to take up residence in my mouth for like a period of time that
That
I would not enjoy. No,
You're right.
no,
I'm
thank
never
you.
going to get a cold if I never put anything near my mouth ever again. Like it's just
Exactly.
like that's how it's going to go.
It's
Everything
it's a
stay away from
deterrent.
me.
Don't eat food. Just go get an IV. You'll be
Don't go near
fine.
people.
Yeah.
Just sit down and contemplate your decisions. You earn
Yeah.
this one. So
Exactly.
I've resorted to doing emergency shooters where I just take about like an ounce or two of water and I'm like, I really don't like you either. And it's effervescent and I always forget. So I dump
Hmm.
it in the water and I'll stir it up real good. And then like I take it real back like fast. And I'm like, thanks, genetics. And then once it's down, hey, I gotta use that alcoholism somehow in my family. Once it's down, I'm like, I've done things I shouldn't do. Like I've just done some things that like I'm just immediately like walking around. They're like, do you need the Tums? I'm like, no, like no, but don't get me the Zicam spray either. Like,
No.
I'll just take, I like Vicks. I'll stick with the cold.
Right.
So
Yeah. I think, maybe just sticking with like the illness is better than trying to come up with the solution to a problem that I'm just not going to be able to solve
just walk
here.
around and
That's
start
fine.
licking doorknobs. It's gonna taste better than this
Yeah.
shit.
I,
So
give me a chance to catch up on a little bit of sleep. That's fine. I can do
yeah,
that.
I like a forced nap. And you were talking about like places we should and shouldn't go. So funny story. In
Mm,
Saranac Lake,
mm,
there was like that big rally in the early
mm.
2000s, like a skate park. Like it was like the late 90s,
Yeah.
early 2000s. My
Yeah.
brother was big into skateboarding. I think he still is. He's working on himself. He's doing really good. And he'll actually get on a skateboard from time to time now. Now that he's in his 40s, I think it's much different. No ollies, much more ibuprofen. Um,
Right.
so I remember, all the kids in town were like, "Wee!" And they like actually, I don't remember what they did. It must have protested at a board meeting or something. And they end up putting, do you remember they like brought in a truck full of blacktop and dumped it behind this
Yeah.
police
Basically,
station?
just
They just
pop
dumped it.
it.
Like
Yeah.
they were like, skate park. And I'm like,
Yeah.
this isn't
Do
even
whatever
good.
you want. Like,
This isn't even good blacktop. Like
no, it's not.
they gave
It's
like the kids a stone rake and they were like trying to make a little spine and it was the worst because it was like up and then straight like across and
yeah.
down. And then like, they made the whatever, the drop in on the quarter pipe and they brought in their own boxes and stuff. And I'm like, something tells me this is an insurance issue in the future, but we'll just roll with it. And they put it behind the police station. I'm like,
Well, I think that's why they put it behind the police stations. Like,
helicopter
we're not going to go
parenting.
about this in the most legal manner possible, so might as well have them on
But
hand.
nobody's going to complain because it's like, well, they're safe behind the police station,
Right.
which brings me to my next point. So my brother's skateboarding. I'm hanging out periodically watching him, lurking around that little area. And people approach. Just, people, I don't know, like adults. No, there was no gate. There was no doors.
No.
It was just a parking lot. Like you just
Right, yeah, it's
walk
just
in.
all the way at the end of the parking lot. Yeah.
It was in the woods almost. Like I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
welcome to the first 48. And like these guys walked up and they were wow, I have no other word to put it other than harvesting.
Mhm.
They were looking for some locals
Right.
they were having a photo shoot and they were kind of specific, kind of non-specific about what it was for ish. And they were like, well, we want some locals who would make it look adequate to, the region. And it's so funny because my grandmother watches Nancy Grace every night. Like that is the woman who instilled the fear of strangers into me. Like she's like, that'll be you. you're gonna get disemboweled.
I think
Like,
I think for
like,
me it was definitely John Walsh. Like that was like what we
oh
watched.
yeah,
That's what we watched like every weekend. Like and like Stranger Danger was kind of huge. Like you could not escape it in like late 80s, early 90s. It was on every talk show. It's like your kid's just gonna get abducted like
yeah.
off
It's 10
the
o'clock. Do you know where your
streets.
kids are? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
there was
It's
always
like
the like your parents like you're gonna end up on a milk carton type of fear. It was
yeah.
crazy, and these guys had like, and my grandmother shows up. She drove the same thing. It was like a 1990 something Aerostar van.
Hmm.
Forever. She drove that thing. It was 97. And she shows up to pick Tommy and me up, and I don't even know what happened along the lines of like, hey, these strange men want us to be in a photo shoot. And my grandmother's like, really? So, the conversation happens, like they exchange numbers or whatever. And somehow my grandmother agrees. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Hold on, hold on, hold on. I can't go to
Right.
Newberry's and get candy while you're in the Grand Union. Okay. You won't even give me $3 to go get some runts. Okay. And this guy's offered you $200 for two children for 2 days. And
Right.
you're like, sounds legit.
Like
And
they didn't even think about their strategy to begin with. It was like, hey, let's just approach some kids on some janky ass skate park, and well, it's gonna go
find out it's
well. It's just gonna go.
Abercrombie and Fitch. And I'm like, we
Yeah.
don't even have that up there at the same time. But
No.
as a kid, I'm just like, okay, like I seriously should have been on the first 48 at least 6 times. And
There's many options for that. There's like so many scenarios that you could think of many times where it's like, wow, really dodged a bullet there. But then at the same time,
but did I
I
though? Because I
right,
ended up
right,
at a photo shoot with Lindsay Lohan and well now Lana and like
yeah,
a bunch of other people, and it was a bunch of our friends. And I
yeah.
was
My
just like,
cousin, my cousin was one of
I'm
them.
like, okay. And I
Yeah.
don't realize how dodgy it is until now when I'm older. And I'm like, they gave the parents a buffet breakfast like in the barn. That was on. It was a beautiful morning. It was like fall. It was cool. Or like early morning in general, like sunrise coming up. I remember it being foggy. I'm always cold, so maybe that was it. And I just remember like they're like, you stay here. My grandmother. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. This is getting scarier. And I remember, the whole shoot goes on. Lindsay Lohan's there. She's really nice. She's actually a really nice person.
Mm,
And everybody was great. We all had fun. And at the time, Lizzie was Lizzie, Lana, we were all just kind of kids.
right.
Nobody really thought of it. But there was a big economic diversification in that group. There was a
Oh,
big mix.
definitely.
But they literally, I grew up with my grandparents. I didn't
Mm,
have my parents per se. My mother hasn't been around. My father's, in and out. And it was kind of one of those situations where I'm like, we're all still the same at that point. And it was really cool having that experience. And I just remember towards the end of it, especially the boys, more the boys than the girls, they were pissed. They couldn't keep the clothes.
right.
So they were pulling pants over pants and belts on top of the pants. So they were like trying to put clothes on under the clothes and trying to take some things. I remember my brother got like one or two things. I can't remember. I think one was like a belt and one was like a pair of pants. And I was just like, I don't think you're supposed to do that. But I was so unconcerned with it. And then I remember my cousins who lived in like Pennsylvania called up my brother and they're like, you're on the bag. And I'm like, we'll never see it. We don't live there.
Right.
And then like years later, you're popping up on TikTok with May Jailer. This discussion of this Abercrombie shoot's happening. And I'm like, this is an attempted kidnapping, but also
Right.
pretty cool. And it's kind of crazy because Fitch from Abercrombie and Fitch actually had Adirondack history. If you didn't know, he used to actually like
Mhm.
vacation up there. And there's
Right.
actually a jacket called the Saranac Lake jacket.
Right.
And like you can hunt for it like on Poshmark. I've got my eyes out. I want one. It comes in like a really cool green. Not that I need a bomber jacket, but I do want one. Like, and it's
And I
really
mean,
cool.
it makes. I'm glad they stuck with the color scheme because the color scheme for anybody
Yeah.
listening, if you want the color scheme of the Adirondacks, it is on a lot of houses green with brown trim or brown with green trim. That's literally what it is.
Green, brown, and sometimes you get like the houses never vary in color. Sometimes white, not
Right.
very often. And then like if you're talking about interior design, it's a lot of like shiplap.
Yeah.
Tons of
Oh yeah.
shiplap everywhere. We were
Yeah.
shiplapping before shiplapping was cool.
Yeah,
That's what we
exactly.
were
Like
doing.
Yeah, basically, like you
Yeah.
wanted panel board, we had it.
Yeah, that was my grandmother has panel board everywhere too. And now like people are
Mhm.
painting it because it's expensive.
Yeah.
And it's there's a lot of cedar. Cedar's big up here too. And right now we're coming into the season where the leaves are changing.
Hmm.
So everybody's clothing, for some reason, I don't know if you've ever actually like people watched in the towns. Have you like sat down
Sometimes.
and like
Sometimes.
almost
Yeah.
like pulled yourself out of yourself and remembered you're a tourist for a second and watched people? Their outfits change with this. Obviously, they change with the season. You're not going to wear whatever, but color scheme wise, like when you go
Hmm.
into fall, it's like burnt orange, maroon,
Yes.
green, brown, and every woman has that cowl neck sweater. And they've
Yes.
got those classic boots. And then they're like all of a sudden about the apples and the pumpkins and the corn mazes. And then winter comes and it's like they all throw that out and it's plaid green and red. And
Hmm.
it's like, and don't worry, the cowl neck sweater is still in.
Oh yeah, it's not going
We're
anywhere.
still doing that. And
Hmm.
everybody is doing the family photo on a tree farm because it's like a
Yep.
living Hallmark movie up here, essentially, just with less promise and less, I guess less attractive.
It's yeah, but you've got a smaller window up here because like, if you do the breakdown of how long the seasons last, you've got winter that lasts from about late October to if you're lucky, it's done by April, and then you get basically about a month or less of spring. You get about 3, 4 months of
Yeah.
summer, and then
You have like the
again,
pollinating.
fall is like about a month. It's not very long
Yeah.
around
Well,
here.
they have like
So,
peak season and it's like a week.
yeah,
And that's where you get a
basically.
lot of the leaf peepers that are like probably the cause of more Geico claims than
Yeah,
anybody up
probably.
here would admit because they're like,
Hmm.
oh my God, a tree. And they hit the brakes. And I'm like, it'll still be there. It's a stationary object. Get somewhere safely. You're killing
Yeah.
people.
It's
Or they run
it,
across the
yeah,
road.
this place is like it is advertising for people who are not familiar with trees and really want to get like
Yeah.
a close up view of one. And yeah, that's what it is.
But
It really is.
we are lucky. Like, honestly, like when I've been out, like I've gone to quite a few places. And when I go out to places that are, highly populated is the best term, I crave the quiet. I crave
Mm,
it. Like as soon as I get done, like you believe it or not, like after I get done like a show, I'm like 3 days of silence. Like just
mm,
I'm peopled out. And I mean that in like the nicest way. Like I love people. I would, even if I was like burnt out, I would still go out and sit with, anybody. But at the same time, like given the opportunity for silence after something like that, it's silence. Generally, if I'm, doing good, it's just music kind of playing in the background, always aromatherapy. And
mm,
we got lucky in the sense of like the smells. Like people don't realize that too.
mm.
Like when you drive through that area, when you have your windows down, like I'm like, oh, it smells like first morning. Ooh, it smells like it's like a wet earth,
Yep.
but it's like a sweet moss, sweet grass. You can smell the dew in the air. It is like I'm making it sound super ethereal right now, but it is what it smells like. And it's kind of one
Hmm.
of those things where, you remember what downtown Saranac Lake smells like. You remember the smell of owl's nest. You remember going down that boardwalk by the Chinese place and you're like, oh man, I want some of that sweet and sour chicken.
Yeah. Yeah.
You remember those things. You go down by the river and you're like, oh God, sewage. And then you go
Yeah.
back up and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, there's owl's nest again. You'd go to our school, like we'd go out and run the mile, and that just smelled like sadness and shame because nobody wanted to run. The
Well,
school
I
had its,
mean,
I
nobody
didn't
wants
want
to
to
run a
run.
mile in school. And I mean, like, especially in like elementary school all the way up to middle school, like you got to run around that fucking long
That's got to
ass
be more than a
goddamn thing
mile.
twice. Yeah,
Is that that's got
it's
to be
way more than a
more?
mile. You're not
I
gonna
think
tell me
now
that
with
it's
Apple
not.
Watches, they're going to be held accountable. Some kid's going to be like,
Yeah, like you're
"Excuse
making
me."
this run at least a mile and a half. Don't lie to me now.
The track though, it was 4 laps, and that I would believe
Yeah.
is a month. So it's kind of one of those things where, and I just remember like I didn't mind running. I was kind of athletic, and then when I got into high school, I just kind of got into the music side of things, and I still did some athletics. I liked running to a degree, but I didn't want to run. Like
Yeah.
I was literally the definition of punk rock. Like I'll do it when I want to do it kind of
Yeah,
mood,
exactly.
which is
Yeah,
stupid. But I just
my
remember like,
memories, yeah, my memories of high school, especially like I was not a runner. I never wanted to run, but like yeah, music was always there and I remember like junior senior year of high school, I was this idiot carrying around, like I always had a Walkman on them, but I always had that like this large ass binder of CDs, and I just carried around with me all
Yes.
the time. And I'm like, it's one of those ones that has like over 200 in it, and I'm like, why do I need this much
Do you
music?
still
Like,
have your binder?
yeah, I do.
I have mine too. So that is one of the funniest things. I will post a picture of what's in that CD binder randomly. I'll be like, look what's here.
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, you have your high school binder? And I'm like, you don't? And at
Yeah,
the same
right.
time, I'm also like, ha ha ha, you're judging me. I'm like sliding it away. And I'm like, we don't need to talk about my high school, you know? And we really did have an amazing music department.
Yeah, we
And
did.
we really did have amazing teachers down there. And that was one thing that, when I was in high school, we had the practice rooms down there. We had Mrs. DeMonk. She was amazing. She was,
Mm-hmm.
she's fantastically talented. We had Mrs. Fournette. We
Yep.
had such artistic opportunities, like,
Mm-hmm.
NISMA, all kind of all these things. And it was one of those things that it's like, why isn't this discussed more? I mean, it's discussed, but it's
Right.
not discussed more. Like, look how many people came out of Saranac Lake, Lake Placid, and moved into the industry
Right.
by choice because the school didn't offer business classes. So I didn't take anything there. In fact, I did a whole term of internal suspension pretty much. Like, but I liked it. It sounds crazy. I liked it because they would give me my work. I could work at my own pace,
Right.
get it done, get it off my desk. And then I would have my binder of contracts.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in honors class. I was in French honors. So I speak Spanish, French, and English. And I remember like Mr. Rezick was my French teacher. Did you have him or
Mm-hmm.
did you? Yeah. Okay. So
No,
Mr. Rezick,
I went
you
for
remember him
Spanish.
though.
Yeah, I do remember him. Yeah, because I went to school with his daughter. So like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So Mr. Rezick would like he'd be the what would they call that moderator, I guess, for like eighth period. And he'd come in
Hmm.
and he'd be like, Miss Collins again. And I'm like, always, I'd rather be here than out there, being chased around by teachers who are just mad.
Yeah.
So he would break me out of the internal suspension room and we'd hang a quick left, go under the overpass and go up those exterior cafeteria stairs. And they had
Hmm.
the vending machines in there and we would get Smart Food and Powerade. And then it
Yeah.
was like Mission Impossible because you weren't allowed to use the vending machines when you were in
Right.
internal suspension. But
Right.
the logic, so I got a lot of my music like preparation and career stuff kind of done against their will to a degree.
Right.
I'm like, you guys just
Um,
keep giving me internal.
yeah, I think like also one thing that our school had that like no other school had up in our area, we had a full-on video production class. Like we had
Yes.
an editing computer. I took the class 2 years in a row because I was a big video nerd from like freshman to senior year, and like we made commercials for local businesses and
Adelphia.
such.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
They'd air on Adelphia and stuff like that. And you guys would work like the carnival parade and stuff, wouldn't you? Like working the
Yeah.
cameras. I was
Yep.
actually talking about that the other day. I'm like, why don't we do that? There's such an elderly community up there. Like when I did the demographic research, they're
Hmm.
hemorrhaging the demographic in which is going to be responsible for the taxation coming up.
Right.
They're just losing people. They're not affluent with what's coming up. But I sound like a political constituent, but I'm not trying
But
to be.
I mean, it's true.
It's
Like there
elderly
was,
people there. And I'm like, you guys got rid of Adelphia. I'm like, if you turn it on, you'll actually be able to generate revenue via monetization. And they look at me like I got six heads. And I'm like, you need me to do it? Like, I kind of like, no,
yeah,
okay. I'll just go mind
yeah.
my
Like
business.
Adelphia had a video production truck, and we just take it all over the place.
Yes.
We aired every
I
single
remember it.
home football game. We
My
aired a lot
grandmother
of other home
appreciated that
games.
a lot.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
that
and
was
my dad was one of the announcers for that. He did that for quite a few years, and like uh that it's sorely missing in the community now because I like
AV
Saranac Lake
Club.
has a very unique community now, but I don't
Yeah.
think it bridges the gap as well as it used to. Like I think it highlights a better like certain demographics better than being inclusive to all of them. And I think like when Adelphia eventually got bought out because it was I forget who the heck came in you know
Oh, I know who you're
I
talking
think it
about.
was Time Warner, and then
Mhm.
it's Spectrum now. But like when they were bought out back in the early 2000s, they put kibosh to that, sold off all those assets. But it's
Yeah.
just like that. It's like that was the peak time, and I always see it as the peak time because there was just like so much going around in the community, and we filmed a lot of it. And like you'll never get that back because like there is a lot of unique stuff that happens in Saranac Lake. Like
Yeah.
Winter Carnival was always, and even now I don't think Winter Carnival is what it used to be. It's kind of like a shadow of itself, but it's still like a staple of the town. And I think a lot of that has to do with the winters are becoming a lot more mild up here now, in the
Yeah.
sense that you're not getting as much snow and there are more warmer days than there used to be. So,
Yeah, I remember having to wear like ski pants and the whole nine to go to the
mhm,
parade. And it was just my
mhm,
grandmother, my grandmother was so funny. She'd park like in front of the post office hours before the
mhm,
parade. And I'd just be sitting, they didn't have phones, they didn't have tablets, this is whatever. And I'm
yeah,
just sitting there for hours in my little ski pants in the 90s waiting for this parade to start. And
mhm,
now it's either like insanely negative 20 or it's
yeah,
like 40. It's
yep,
like, it's this or that. And it's kind of one of those things where the castle's either super open or super closed. Like
yeah,
there's,
exactly.
are we going to have time? We have to build the whole castle in 2 weeks. I'm like, that's insane. It used to go on for like a month, I think, or something like that. It seemed like it anyway. It seemed like
Hmm.
they had a far bigger window,
Right.
and they started monitoring the ice sooner because, I mean, realistically, last year we didn't get really any ice until
No.
January. And then it was a
Right.
mad dash. And they did
Hmm.
amazing with what they had. I will give them that. That committee works really hard to kind of come up with the themes. And
Hmm.
the irony of last fall going through the discussion about trying to bring in the multi-use venue and them having, kaputzed it with whatever purposes. It was over one box on the seeker not being checked or whatever. So they put it away, got rid of it. And
Hmm.
I was already working on the next thing. And I love irony. I think it is always funny when things kind of come around full circle. And then, the Winter Carnival happens and I'm like, oh, I didn't get up, darn. And all of a sudden they're like next year's theme. So this year coming into 2025, the theme is music legends.
Right.
I'm like, you guys shot down the venue to make the Winter Carnival theme music
Right.
legends. I love it.
Right.
So I'm like, I'm gonna go with it. I'm kind of like, okay, I see you. And then I had announced Tinder in like what, March, something like that. March, April, somewhere in
Hmm.
there. March, April, May, somewhere in there. And so that goes on. And then the concerts at the end of July, coming into the beginning of July, the July 4th, they don't have a parade there. They have the July 4th kitty parade.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, well, what's your theme? Because we have a big parade down where I live. Huge. In fact, we did the parade down here. And the theme was like insects. I'm like, you guys made it crickets. Like the amount of like slow sipping of my coffee that happened that day. And I'm like,
What the hell?
is someone fucking with me?
They're like
I'm like into a conspiracy theory.
they're
I'm like,
trolling you. Yeah.
and they're like, somewhere on the internet, there is a woman who is going, what the fuck? But at the same
Hmm.
time, I was also like, oh, that's exciting. And at the same time, I was like, but crickets, though, they're not trained. They don't know the decibels. Like,
No, they
I'm now a
don't.
cricket connoisseur. So
Right.
it
Maybe
ends
if
up
they
being
had done
funny.
their research, and like listen, they would have known. But
That board meeting, those series of news articles, there was like 4 in the paper. They got lit up on Facebook. And, the board meetings, I got handed, you're right, that entire town's like atmosphere. It's so funny. They're like, we moved here for the culture, but could you turn it down and could you just get away from me? I'm like,
Hmm.
you guys, that's not what we do. You got
Right.
2 ears and 1 mouth. You're not listening enough to what you talk.
Right.
It's kind of one of those things. So, but online, it was blowing up. There was people that were like, this is what we need. This is what we want. And when I went in and I pointed that out, I'm like, cool. At the second meeting, there was like 125 people there against
Hmm.
me. And I almost wish you had been there because it was funny because I'm sitting in my seat and I've got my little, blazer on and I'm like, all right, PR time. And they handed me a petition against myself. Like, yeah, fuck her. Like, wait a minute, that's me. Never mind. Here
That's
you go. And
dumb.
I just kept passing it. Well, no, I think everybody should have a voice. If you want to say it, go ahead. But at the same time, like, you have every right to talk, and I have every right to tell you you're wrong. So it's kind of one of
I
those
think
things.
I think the problem is in like the one of the negative things about here is that change is incredibly freaking slow up here because nobody wants
Mm-hmm.
to do anything because they're so concerned with kind of maintaining this reputation that this place has. And that
It's like The
reputation is always going to
Village,
be
the M.
there.
Night
Yeah,
Shyamalan movie.
right.
Just
Yeah,
beyond the
basically.
trees. Like, ah.
Basically. I would, I would say like I would say Tupper Lake is more like the village. Saranac Lake is like
They got
it's a
the
little
yeah.
more friendly. It's a little more accommodating. It's a
Act
little more
Lake is the
friendly.
welcoming center to the village.
Yeah, basically. And then, Lake Placid's like, they've been rocking it for decades now. And
Yeah.
it's
There's a lot of potential up here, but the thing is that
mhm,
they don't, like you're saying, they don't understand how to progressively move that town while maintaining its integrity. And
right.
you can do it. There are things now. Like I said, there's so many organizations. There's so much.
Hmm.
The one thing that they don't want to do is fact sharing. That's the
Right.
one thing that they don't want to do. And that, it's the same thing. I'm like, you guys, one kid said, well, you're going to bring drugs in this town. And I'm like, how many people
Sure.
in here
There's
do you
already
think are
drugs in this
currently
town. What are you
using?
talking about? They're
Yeah,
already here.
I'm like, I don't care. I'll fist fight you to the grave for this one. Like, this is, one of those things where music needs to come back to that town.
Mm,
I do think I hope somebody's reached out to, Lana's camp. I know she doesn't, I don't know if she has much interest in coming back to the area. I'd host her. If
right.
she could play for me, I'd put that thing together so fast. And I would, I'd do it with pride because it's one of those things where I'm like, you guys, you're like, we're going to make it this. I'm like, I don't see a plaque for her in there. Yeah, you have to be from the area or something like that. I'm like, she deserves a plaque just as much as the Olympians. She's
Yeah,
done just as
exactly.
much. Have you ever done a tour? That shit's insane. It's exhausting. Be sure to listen to part 2 of this episode. Visit www.whoischristineanyway.com for access to all the social media links and additional podcast episodes.